Hi again, everybody. John Boutte, Buffalo Sports Museum, with another episode of In the Vault. We've been dealing with the 1972 season for the Bills and the Sabres in the last two episodes. And we're going to skip ahead one more year for the Bills into a record-breaking season for arguably the best player that's ever played for the Buffalo Bills, and which happens to have a story later in his life that we will not even go into, because this is about sports, and this is about celebrating Buffalo sports past, and that's something we just quite simply we won't go into. But in 1973, O.J. Simpson had probably the greatest year ever by a running back, and I think that stands to this day. I know that 2,000 yards has been eclipsed 5 other times after Simpson did it, and but in all of those seasons, that was done in 16 games. Simpson's 1973 season was done in 14 games. And that record in terms of yards per game still stands. 143.1 yards per game in his 14 games that season stands as a record, which is quite simply astounding, seeing that it's almost been 50 years, almost 50 seasons since that day in December 16th, 1973, when that happened. So I think it really is amazing. Simpson was quite simply the greatest running back that I ever saw. A lot of NFL historians like to think that Jim Brown is the greatest of all time, and that's fine. I really never saw Jim Brown play. I was way too young at that point in my life to see Jim Brown play, and I've heard all the stories and read all the accounts of his greatness, but I can't imagine anyone being as fast and strong as Simpson was, especially in his glory years of 1973 through 1976. He entered that day needing 141 yards, I believe, to break Brown's record of 1,863 yards in a game. And he did that quite easily. And as Reggie McKenzie would most famously say, now it's time for the 2,000. That was Reggie McKenzie and the entire electric company's goal that year was to get to 2,000 yards, which NFL experts thought would never happen. Brown's record was in an era when running was the number one way of moving the football. And people thought that was one of those records, much like the Joe DiMaggio hitting streak record and the Ted Williams 406 batting average record would never be broken. And Simpson and the electric company went on a mission that year to do that. Opening day in 1973, they played the Patriots on the road at Foxborough. I think he had 219 yards and was off to a great start. He eclipsed the 1,000-yard barrier in the 7th game of the season against Kansas City, a Monday night game, the first Monday night game in Buffalo history. And it was on. Like I said, he needed 141 yards to beat Brown's record that day, and ended up with 200 on the dot to end up with 2,003 yards. Interesting story, and I remember this from being 10 years old and watching the game. He originally was credited with only 198 yards that game, and was taken out of the game with 2,001 yards. And I kept thinking to myself, even at 10 years old, boy, I hope they didn't make a mistake and shortchanged him 2 yards after the game ended, because that would have, he had a half a quarter to go and he could have actually got a lot more carries. But after the game, the statisticians went through the records and actually credited him with 2 more yards that they didn't think he had. So thus the 2003 total. Simpson went on to play several more years in Buffalo. Contract dispute a few years later, ended up signing. And in 1977, was felled by injury and played his last game in Buffalo. Simpson had always wanted to play for his hometown San Francisco 49ers, so the Bills obliged him and sent him off to San Francisco. And in a historic trade that quite simply was ended up being in the resurgence of the Buffalo Bills, because with the draft picks that they received, they put on a heroic charge to the playoffs, AFC East title in 1980, and then again another playoff berth in 1981. So in actuality, the trade ended up helping Buffalo. But this is about OJ and the historic season in 1973. I'll never forget it. Like I said, I was 10 years old, and going into that game, we all knew that Simpson had the ability to do that. And the game was almost secondary, because the Bills needed help that day to make the playoffs. A win did not get them in the playoffs. They missed out later that day, I believe, when Pittsburgh won, which eliminated them. So it was mainly the only goal that day, I guess, was getting Simpson his 2,000 yards, because it was near impossible to make the playoffs. But a great season in Bills history, 9-5, very, very memorable, at least for this guy here that was 10 years old at the time. And like I said, whatever Simpson did later in his life, we don't even mention, because in my eyes, yeah, he's still that great running back for the Buffalo Bills from that wonderful time in the 1970s. We hope you like the segment. We've gotten a number of requests for certain things coming up. There's some great dates in Buffalo sports history coming up, so we'll be tackling, no pun intended, those topics. So hope you had a great time watching our video, and please spread the word. We love to have new members, and we love to show off stories. Take care.